science technology, terminology. That essentially means you had to knock on the door of the CD every few seconds and see if there was a CD there, right? That was a problem for me because every time you did that on the Sony CD, which was 50% of the market, the red light will come on and go off, right? Imagine you're not doing anything and the red light is going on. So I was very worried that the users will pick up the phone and call our support. Now every support call that we take wipes out profits from 3 copies of Windows that we sell. So that's a problem. I also looked at the cycle time of the LED and I said, God, at the rate at which the light was flashing in about 3 years, that thing will burn out. So that'll be another problem, right? So for all these reasons, I didn't want to do it. But this kid was extremely persistent. So to get him off my back, I put him in touch with a company down the road called Humongous Entertainment. They had a game called Freddy Fish. So they put this thing, so that you put the CD on and immediately Freddy Fish came. Probably some of your siblings or older cousins played with this thing. And it'll come and it was a great thing. The only other thing I did was the Windows itself was going through what was called beta, Windows 95. And I made sure that when you put the CD for Windows 95 in, it will automatically install itself using this feature. And I did this for a very select subset because I was extremely worried how bad it was going to be. Guess what? We had so many other features on Windows 95. And the magazines did not write about anything else. This was the only feature they thought was important enough on Windows because you could put a CD play, an audio CD, and a musical play. You put a game CD, games will play. If you put Windows, it will install itself and on and on and on. So I was stuck with shipping that feature, and I had to go change the CD industry at that time and make it a requirement that every CD that shipped with Windows at that point was interrupt-driven so that we could have this feature. So the most important lesson in that is innovation can come from anywhere, and that applies to each and every one of you. When you join the workforce, what you're bringing in is fresh new ideas. Oldies like me are in a rut and are thinking in a certain way, and we are not able to think outside the box. So if you come up with an idea, don't lose heart in it and push it, because some of the best inventions come from people like you. And of course, the person on the right, if you recognize Bill Gates, well, he gave up college and started what was Microsoft at that time. And Zuckerberg, again, did the same thing with Facebook, right? So you might not have an impact of that magnitude, but you can have an impact if you just do the right thing. Okay, then the other 2 quick incidents I'd like to recall is my first 2 interactions with Bill Gates. I was working again in the same era on Windows 95 on what is called long file names. At that time, Windows did not have long file names. It had what was called 8.3 names. I had worked on Unix, it had long file names. Macintosh had long file names. OS2 had long file names. So I was designing it. There was a big problem with it because we wanted to make sure all the existing programs had to run, which was a very hard problem. So I was sitting in my office and there was a knock on the door. I said, come in. Bill Gates walks in, pulls up the door. This was probably 6 weeks into my work, pulls up a chair next to me and starts designing with me how to design, how long file name should work on Windows. We spent probably 45 minutes an hour probably talking about compatibility, what to worry about, and all of that stuff. I was very surprised at that time that he knew the depths of what was called the FAT file system at that time. That file system still exists. It's a file system that exists on every pen drive that you touch. It's a file system that exists on every GPS device that you have. That is the file system that is still in use in every one of those devices. Microsoft still gets license royalties from them, but that's a different story for a different day. So around that era, another thing was I had hired a new kid into Microsoft, and Bill had this thing that he did, that he would invite all interns and new hires to his house. So, and the manager also got to go with it. So as the manager of this new hire, I was invited as well. So I go to Bill Gates' house. What is interesting is we all get shipped into Bill Gates' house, beautiful house on the lake. This is the old house, not the new one. And then we are all standing around, and Bill saunters in half hour into the party. And he's socially relatively inept for those of you who have or have not seen him, right? He's fidgeting, and he's not, probably like me, not sure of himself. And then, so I just thought I'll go and give him company. So I went and go talk to him while one of the kids picks up enough courage to come and talk to him. And we start talking about all the work I'd done when I was on Unix, on what was called the 83, 86 instruction set, just an Intel chip. And what blew me away was the depth of knowledge he had. He knew every instruction in the 386 instruction set, its timings, its all kinds of stuff. And I kind of knew that mostly because I was working in that area. So you were having a rip-roaring fun conversation. But what stunned me even more was he had figured out all the things that was missing, and he was pushing Intel to put all of that in the subsequent new chips that were coming in. The key insight for me there was successful people, and I've had the pleasure of talking to Jeff Bezos quite a bit as well, founder of Amazon. All these guys are the same way. They can dive deep and they understand an area very, very well, and they have the ability to pull up and look at the big picture and do the right thing. So successful people cannot lose control of how things are at the depths of the system, but also have to have the big picture. And so if you're ever running successful companies, that's something to think about. Okay, then I worked on IE. Interestingly, I came from Sun, and interestingly, I was the person pushing Java in Microsoft. I believed in Java a lot, and I pushed Java into about 150 different products in Microsoft. Unfortunately, the stories in the papers could be whatever they are, but Sun essentially felt threatened because Microsoft, we had some of the best compiler guys at the time, and the Java we wrote was about 50 times faster than what Sun had. Anyway, Sun ended up suing us, and I had to basically pull Java out, which was something I believed in. But what was interesting was not that, but we were working in the competitive market, and Microsoft had been in multiple competitions until then. Excel versus Lotus, OS2 and Windows, and IE versus Netscape as well. And there was a lesson and a pattern in every one of this, and that's repeating again, but unfortunately the other way around for us, right? One, you have to be good at what you're doing. In each and every one, Excel or whatever, we did a good job. But that alone is not enough. Your competition has to make a mistake. And in this case, Lotus did make a mistake. They refused to put 1, 2, 3 on Windows when it moved from MS-DOS to Windows. Mac did not do compatibility. OS2 did, anyway, other things, which gave Windows an opening. And Netscape got so caught up on the server and ignored the browser while we were investing on the browser. So the competition has to make a mistake, and then you have to maximize on it. Well, the tables are turned when it came to search, when Microsoft slept at the wheel and we did not invest in it and Google invested in it. So that's a lesson for us that whenever you are competing, not only do you have to be good at it, and that's not good enough, your competition has to make a mistake and you have to leverage it as well. And because Java was killed, three of us came up with what became .NET at Microsoft. We had multiple languages at that time called BASIC and C# and C++. And we thought that there was a single way we could run all these languages. And if we do that, other languages in the world could also come and run on that. Bill Gates, when I say Bill Gates had worries, I'm being charitable. He just hated the idea. We would go into reviews with him, and I will come with my face almost bloodied, and we would have pitched battles on this. He just did not think it was a good idea. He wanted to kill it. The one big lesson for there is if you really believe in something, you got to stand up and fight for it. And I thought it was really the right thing for the company, and there were two others who came with me. We had a sponsor, that helps, because if Bill chooses to kill something at Microsoft at that time, it's very hard for you to stand that. So, but what is true today is .NET is extremely successful and is used widely. Next version of Messenger, all kinds of applications inside Microsoft and outside Microsoft are written in .NET. So a big lesson there is if you believe in something, you better be willing to stand up and fight for it. I'll skip this other thing. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay. I'll talk about two other things, and then I'll probably switch to, I'll probably get to the trivia in about 10, 15 minutes. I ended up running Hotmail, and this was a very sobering time for me. I took over Hotmail in March of 2004. I don't know how many of you know Microsoft actually bought Hotmail from Sudeep Bhatia a long time back. It was the very first mail on the web. That was an amazing innovation at that time. But that was before my time, and I took over Hotmail in about February of 2004. I walk into a meeting in March of 2004, and the company is saying, you better kill Hotmail, because every user we get on Hotmail, the cost of using that user was, the cost of hosting that user was costlier than the revenue we were making on it. So the more users we had, the more money we lost, right? So So everybody was like, why are we even in Hotmail? Then in April, Google launches Gmail. The irony of it was 3 years ago, I worked with a guy called Greg Bardrose, and he's the guy in Google who actually wrote Gmail as well. So anyway, Google launches Gmail, and Gmail is 1 gigabyte inboxes, and Hotmail had 2 megabyte inboxes. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's like almost 1,000th, 1/500th the size of what Gmail had at that time. So Hotmail was pretty much dead, if you will, in the water. So we ended up, and we were running on Unix systems at that time. The one amazing thing is when you are in a life and death situation, somehow the clarity becomes amazingly good, right? Because only the priority items become important. All the things that are not a priority just fall off the plate. To just give you the pace at which we had to move things at that time, we moved from Unix systems to Windows systems within a matter of 4 weeks. For those of you who are in the computer science field probably know what that means. We had to completely rewrite our entire mail system in that. We moved from 2 megabyte boxes to 250 megabyte boxes, then to 1 gigabyte boxes in a matter of 12 weeks from start. We shipped it to Asia within 3 months from start. We shipped it all over Europe within 6 months of start. And we shipped it all over the world within 8 months of start, right? So the pace at which we had to go do things was amazingly fast. But the flip side question was, what the heck were we doing, not doing that until Google basically showed us the right way, right? So that's a lesson. But the key point for me there was, there is and it happens in startups too, and I was in a startup 2 or 3 years before this happened. When in startups and when there is a life and death situation, you get an amazing amount of clarity and execution focus that cannot be, that just cannot be managed very easily in a very big setting. And probably Google faces that now, Facebook faces that now to some extent, and parts of Microsoft we face that where as you make a lot more profits, it's easier for you to hide the sins that you have in the company a lot more than you would if you were in a startup where you will be exposed to all of those sins. Around the same time, I was running Messenger as well. I ran multiple things at that time, Hotmail Messenger and storage and address book and stuff like that. And the amazing thing about Messenger at that time was it was the biggest IM in the world at that time. We had about 300 to 400 million users. 90% of the Netherlands population, I don't mean 90% of the internet population, 90% of Netherlands would use Messenger. It was the rage in Europe at that time. But we were pretty dumb on how we would maintain Messenger. We'd actually bring it down at 2 o'clock in the morning, US time, for about 15 minutes while we upgraded Messenger. Now, of course, it was 11 o'clock in the morning in the Netherlands, forget that. But what we would do is we'll bring the thing down, upgrade our Messenger service, and bring it back up. So there was this eventful time in October of 2014. I'm sitting in the Microsoft campus. It's 12 or 1 in the morning. We bring the Messenger service down. We bring it up. It did not come up. So we said, well, no big deal. We'll go back to the old version. So we go back to the old version, and we bring Messenger up. Well, it did not come up. 3 hours later, Messenger was not up. 3 days later, Messenger was not up. It took an entire week before we could fix what the problem was. It was a very humbling time because all your customers were basically dead in the water. Basically, what had happened was there is something called a network switch made by a company called Cisco. And the Messenger service had grown big enough that it melted that switch. That switch just could not take that amount of traffic that was coming in. The Messenger service, when it came down, the Messenger client, which was like Yahoo Messenger or Facebook chat and all of these kinds of things, was continuously hitting the service, and it had hit a knee where all the clients were hitting the service and the entire network would melt down.